TAM TUK by George Adams. Continued. Chapter 4. There was still no blue and white tape and no meat wagon and no flashing lights when I got there. There was the usual man with a camera just going in, but the forensic squad hadn't been called. There was a policeman at the door and two inside. One was an inspector. I knew him. His name was Chu, a fleshy man, the far side of 50, and his English was reasonable. Junior was there too, looking suitably grim. "A friend of Mr. Alex," I said as I entered, and Chu gave me a once-over, which didn't say anything much. "Heart attack, we think," said Chu in Cantonese. "We're very sorry, Mr. Song." Alex Sung was looking at his father's body, which still hadn't been covered by the usual plastic sheet, and there was real horror showing now. His face actually looked quite panic-stricken. "How did it happen?" he asked Chu. "Well, he fell, but that probably didn't kill him. When did you see him last?" "I think it must have been Sunday, the family dinner. He looked fine." "You can never predict a heart attack at this age." All the strokes and heart attacks I'd seen looked a different colour, but it was hard to gauge anything by that at present. The body was the usual sickly grey, quickly turning to pure, translucent white. Sung Senior actually looked much less horrible in death than in life. He looked almost ethereal and sublime. The photographer had taken shots from every angle and was putting his camera back into its case. "So you can formally identify him?" Chu asked Alex. "That's all in order then. We're going to move the body to the government mortuary. You might like to inform a funeral director. Have you got a number?" Sung Jr. was still staring at the whole scene, turning this way and that, grimacing and wincing, but saying nothing. Suddenly he raced to the bathroom, and there was the unmistakable sound of vehement but largely unproductive retching. "It strikes some people that way," I said, but Inspector Chu and I knew otherwise. Chu said something to the two other policemen, one of whom was closing the living room window. The chicken was now nowhere to be seen, I noticed. Then more people arrived. Another Sung's son, a much smaller one who bore no resemblance to Junior, and a scrawny-looking girl in beige office wear who was probably his girlfriend. Then one of the old worthies from the Kaifeng popped his head round the door, gasped, cursed, and then slowly hobbled downstairs. By the time all that was over, Junior had returned from the bathroom and sat down on the living room sofa. His face was that of a man with a bad stag night hangover. I had thoughts in my head at that moment quite different from a bereavement counsellor, so I made my excuses and left. As I was passing the Italian restaurant again outside, my telephone rang, and to keep in with the mobile spirit of modern Hong Kong, I decided to talk as I walked to my flat. It was Mrs. Chow. "Hello, Mr. Trelford. Any news?" "Not exactly. Did you know Mr. Sung at all?" "Sung?" "Yes, the man who was looking after Adeline's car." "Oh, yes. What about him?" "He's dead." "Oh, really? How did it happen?" "The police aren't sure. Could be a heart attack." "I see. Unfortunate. Very unfortunate. Well, I have good news for you. I think your assignment might be over. Adeline has been in touch by telephone, and she says she's quite fine, but she just needs some rest at the moment. I quite understand. She's still in Hong Kong, and, well, there's no point looking for her anymore. Mission accomplished, as they say. But you can keep the retrainer, Mr. Trelford. I'm very grateful to you, and if—" "What else did she say?" "Sorry? And when did she call you?" "Just a few minutes ago, in fact. I was going into a meeting." "And she sounded all right?" "Absolutely fine, yes." The reason why I ask is that until you or I have actually seen her, neither of us can be 100% sure she is really as she says she is. She might be lying to you. Did that possibility ever occur to you, Mrs. Chow? Oh, I don't think that's the case here. She's rather an emotional girl. If something were really wrong, I would have felt it. She knows she can always talk to her mother. Girls do, you know. Anyway, I think the matter is settled, Mr. Twelford, as I say. Thank you again. And now I really must be getting on. The line went dead. Interesting place, Hong Kong. Come and find my daughter, Mr. Twelford. Highly urgent, Mr. Twelford. Take the case, Mr. Twelford. Then, only a few hours later, it's pull down the curtain, get off the case, and shut up, Mr. Twelford. But she hadn't actually said the last part. Perhaps she trusted me. I was still interested in the contents of the little data chip I had found. I sat down in Casa Twelford, refusing to be depressed by the rubbish bags piling up in the kitchen, the sound of food being rhythmically and thunderously chopped in the old bag's flat next door. I fired up my laptop and flashed up the 4 documents Adeline had made a point of photographing. One was the main page of her passport. The other 3 were some kind of balance sheet or ledger, but it was all in Chinese, and a lot of handwritten Chinese at that. I attached the 3 photographs to an email, sent them to the office. I sent a backup copy to my private email, just in case. Then I put the chip inside a little plastic holder and sealed it into an envelope addressed to my private box in Central. When pretty girls in Hong Kong start carrying shooters around in their Vuitton bags, you have to take precautions. Then, just as I was thinking of going back to Chung Hom Kok and seeing if Adeline was still there, the telephone rang. It was Larry. "Only one body today," I said. "Whose?" "My landlord's. I don't know whether to laugh or cry." "Don't worry. I'm sure the rent roster is the first thing they'll check on. Did he fall or was he pushed?" "Hard to say. It looks like a heart attack, but not to me. I found the little honey, but she pulled a Kel-Tec semi on me and said she doesn't want to be found." "A gun? You don't say. How the hell did she get hold of a Kel-Tec? Sure it was real?" I didn't stay long enough to find out. Guns terrify me. I never carried one in my life. The girl's either mad or bad. I can't decide which." "So you're off the case?" "Mrs. C seems to think so. She gave me the kiss-off in a very lovely way, far too lovely for her. And when we get to keep the retainer, I think it's fine. But I'm still more than intrigued. No law against a man looking into something on his own, just as an honest, concerned citizen, is there? Doesn't pay the rent. Well, we must be all right for a month or 2. The check cleared, I take it. Find out tomorrow, but I think it's as good as gold. Still can't figure why she hired us. Well, Guilos do make good fall guys, don't they? At the very least, they help to gum up the works." "I don't get you." "Neither do I. Shall I still try to get hold of the rest of the email? Yahoo is pretty sticky about total access to holders' accounts, but you can get individual emails and ISP addresses if you sound as if you're really interested, if you're really entitled to them. Through the police, of course." "Use your contacts, then." "I'd like that email, very much so. I'm pretty sure it was sent in Hong Kong." "So where will you be if I want you?" "In Stanley for a while. I'm going to look up an old friend." "Hope you know what you're doing." "Did I ever?" As I marched along Stanley Bay front, a loud procession was taking place. At the head of it was the old girl pictured on the election poster which festooned the Kai Fong building. She was followed by a number of faceless minions handing out leaflets. Mrs. Lee was being very loud because she had one of those mobile PA systems strapped to her withered body. She eyed me for a moment with distaste. She was dressed mainly in red and gold, which gave her message loud and clear enough without the electronic amplification. Vote for me and get rich. She wore a broad silk sash with her name on it, and her new perm was as stiff as a Presbyterian funeral. The makeup was as thick as a crooked alibi. I put fingers in both ears to show my appreciation. I was actually on the electoral roll, so that might have irked Mrs. Lee a little bit, but I doubt it. The procession finally turned left at the Blue House, and the raucous rant of old Mama Lee reverberated down the tree-lined lane like a police instant room on Saturday night. Thank God we didn't have all that many elections in Hong Kong. I found Jimmy Perry behind a glass of box red in the comfier corner of his dying Italian restaurant, looking as usual as if he was going to have a stroke before bedtime. If I ever thought I was overdoing it in any way, I always had Jimmy to comfort me. There he was, the purple-visaged John Bull of Stanley, popping away the red like Lucasade from breakfast to late dinner, and all organs still holding up. I dodged past the plastic vines and Ruffino bottles hanging from the ceiling and sat down. "Hello, stranger," he said in his Barnsley drawl. "Hello, Jimmy. Got used to the building murk yet?" "Oh, don't get me started. Can't see in front of me. Who wants to come down to Stanley and look at concrete mixers? It's a scandal." "But who ordered them all, Jimmy? Come on, tell me, who's on the make?" "Oh, it's that old cow you just saw with the megaphone for one. Mrs. Moneybags Lee and all her friends in the Kai Fung, of course." "But how does she do it? Come on, I need to know." "Need to know? You're bloody puddle, man, if you don't know. Every bugger knows." "Well, what does every bugger know?" "Well, look, see that set of small traders' places they built down where Temporary Market used to be? Guess who dished the leases out? Bloody local committee, not government, not tender. Bloody peppercorn rent while I'm paying through the nose for this pile of crap down at this end. All the trade will sit down there and I'll have nout. That's bloody socialism for you. That's the bloody free economy too. It's enough to drive you to drink. You can bloody well say that again." A glass of his box red was brought to me, but I let it sit there. "Keep it up, Jimmy." I was walking up the escalator past the parking shop and all the shops selling cushions and candles and children's books. I emerged on the plaza walkway and was approaching the taxi rank. There was hardly ever a queue, and there was nearly always a taxi roaming around, looking for a return fare back to Central. I hailed one. Then something curious happened. A black Lexus pulled up, and the door swung open. "Get inside, Mr. Trelford," a voice said. It was a nice voice in the circumstances, a voice you at first found really quite hard to connect to small handheld guns, koshers, or ice picks of any kind. A man appeared from behind and got in with me. He was Chinese, nicely dressed, about 40, and stank of ginger, tobacco, and just a hint of horrible cologne. I couldn't see much of the driver. He looked smartly dressed too, and a lot younger. "Thanks for the limo," I said. "No jokes, please, Mr. Trelford," the man said in a local accent edged with a patina of North America. "Your work is over, Mr. Trelford, and certain parties just want to wish you well, thank you for a job well done. They want to be generous to a struggling enterprise like our own. It can't be easy meeting all those bills, and in such a difficult area of business too, with all that competition and all those overheads." He took a thick brown envelope out of his pocket and dropped it in my lap. "Of course, certain parties just want to be assured that on acceptance of our appreciation, your work on the matter can be brought to a formal and definite conclusion, and you can move on to pastures new, as the saying goes, I believe. Here was another character who had been watching a lot of Turner classic movies. So I just put the envelope in my pocket and walk away, or I throw it back at you and look hard, hurt and disdainful. Or do I get bumped off in any case? Which page are we on exactly? Always the joker, and so pleasant to listen to. You have had many admirers, Mr. Troilford. Look, get a life and leave Warner Brothers in the DVD racks for a minute. This is the new millennium, if you hadn't realized. My office doesn't have blondes in bottles, PXs are digital, you can't find a pawnbroker at a moment's notice to hide your incriminating evidence, and the doctors with bags full of needles have gone legit and moved into Prince's building. All their clients are in support groups, rehab, or on the line to the Samaritans. If you change the channel, so will I. I think I'd lost him there. The car drove down to the little Carmelite monastery, or rather nunnery, home to half a dozen very frail, quiet nuns. Just then I wished I could have joined them for devotional prayers. The door of the car swung open, and I got out, leaving the wad of money on the thick leather seat behind me. I made my way wearily down the street and up the stairs home. I needed a drink, and there was some awful King Robert bathtub scotch I kept for emergencies in the kitchen cupboard. I sat down on the blue sofa and inhaled a large slug of it. I turned on the CD player and surrendered to some Debussy, the Piano Fantasy, which Debussy hadn't had the nerve to call a piano concerto, or it would be more widely played than it is. Around 8 p.m., with the cheap booze making my temples throb, but warming the rest of me, just as I was thinking of walking up to Chung Kok again, I was just tight enough for that. My telephone rang. It was Sung Junior. "She's gone," he said, without so much as a lead-in. "Gone?" "She left a note. Gone." I laid down the mug of scotch with an audible clatter. What the hell? Take 2 Panadol and call me in the morning. In the films, the Broads disappeared and stayed gone. They didn't turn up, wave a gun at you, and say they didn't want to be rescued. If they did, they hung around for a while to sing a duet, or at least jump into bed with you. Times had changed.